launched from the fast ice, we went around the other side of the pack, and immediately our plan started to unravel. The chunks of ice were far bigger than we anticipated. It was way more dynamic. It was constantly moving around. The idea that we could wiggle backwards and forwards between the pack was ludicrous. What's more, we were getting pushed further and further away from the coast. We thought, let's do the sensible thing, turn around, go back to where we started. We saw some cabins on the shore. We set up there for 2 or 3 days until the pack moves. We turned around, and to our horror, actually my horror was sort of a recurring theme throughout the adventure. To our horror, the pack had already moved. And so what we had to do was kayak south, find the end of the pack and turn right and make our way back to land. But that right-hand turning could come in half an hour, 2 hours, 24 hours, never. We didn't know how long we'd have to kayak. And to make matters worse, we were engulfed by this fog. And the fog turned everything gray. The sea turned gray, the sky turned gray, the ice turned gray, and perspective became utterly impossible to gauge. And time again, we'd come around a corner, I'd see cliffs 2 or 3 miles away, nothing between us and the base of the cliffs. I'd say, we've done it. Our salvation is at hand. And then the fog would clear. My eyes would focus. The illusion would lift, and I'd realize they weren't cliffs. They weren't 2 or 3 miles away. It was maybe a piece of ice just this big, 10, 20 meters away. Perspective was so confusing. And then I came around one corner, and I saw a big piece of ice with 10 polar bears on it. Never seen a polar bear in my life. I didn't know they traveled in packs. I'm about to scream to my teammates, polar bears, polar bears. And the fog clears. My eyes focus. The illusion lifts. I realize they're not polar bears. They're seagulls. And they're about 6 meters away from me. And how did I think they were anything but seagulls? It was so confusing. And eventually, after hours, we made it back to the fast ice. Not back to land, but at least somewhere we could walk on. So we got out, we tied the kayaks around our waist, and we started to walk across the ice. And after a while, we started to follow some polar bear footprints. And that might sound like a bad idea. And to be fair, it would be if we caught the polar bear. But we thought a polar bear is much more experienced than us, much heavier than us. Anything we can stand on, it can stand on. It went in a very straight line, and we followed it. And at one point, it went on a 10-meter detour to the left, and we cut across that detour. And as we did, I thought to myself, I wonder why it went over there. Maybe it smelled something, maybe it saw something. Crack! The ice gave way below me. I fell into the Arctic Ocean and just caught myself with my elbows. My teammates ran over. I said, don't come, you'll fall in too. So they nosed the kayak towards me. I grabbed onto the bow, and they pulled me out. We turned around and looked at the big, soft piece of ice that I'd fallen through and said, maybe we trust the polar bear from now on. So we stuck back to his feet. And after 14 hours, we made it back to the coast. The final few meters of ice crumpled against the coastline into these static ice waves, and the sun came through the fog, creating this ethereal atmosphere. And it was amazing. And we made it into the cabins. And this should have been the peak moment of humiliation. Another adventure, another failure, 0 miles, 14 hours of life and death struggle. But instead, my teammate Eileen turned to me and said, we are explorers! And we dived into this group hug, bonded by our shared misadventure. And in that moment, I realized that I'd become too obsessed with the outcome, the records and the firsts, and I'd forgotten what really mattered to me. And that was the adventure itself. Because in the pursuit of a goal, the pursuit is always greater than the goal. And if you discover what it is that intrinsically motivates you about the pursuit, then the goal will look after itself. And this is backed up by countless studies, like language students who have intrinsic goals, like I want to be challenged by learning something new, or I want to be immersed in the culture by learning a language. They're all more likely to get an A than people who say, I'm doing a language because I want to get an A. Because when the chips are down, intrinsic motivations are always more powerful than extrinsic drivers.